Hello there, and welcome back to the Donor Centric Approach. This podcast is brought to you by MRP Donor Development, where we keep our donors at the center of everything that we do, and by our friends and sponsors at Stellar Web Systems, the nonprofit tech solution. Today we have a very special episode because today we're digging deep and we're talking about the intersection of healing, of mission, of sustainability in ministry, which can mean many different things, and what leaders learn about carrying wounds while building life-given work. I hope you appreciated that analogy right there, Dan, because our guest today is Dan Meola, a co-founder and president of Life-Given Wounds. Dan, welcome to the Donor Centric Approach.
Wonderful to be here, Orlando. And yeah, I appreciate that tie into our ministry.
Of course. This is going to be a special conversation because though we are going to talk about both mission and fundraising, what the goal for today's conversation is to provide value to you, our listeners of this show, by giving you, a true insight into what goes on as a nonprofit leader, to let you know that there are other ministries like yours who are trying to achieve this mission with the resources at their disposal, to let you know that your struggles are not alone, but to let you know that you can take advantage of the fact that there's a community of other missions out there filled with good Christian Catholic men and women who are trying to do the Lord's work. And it's one of the reasons why I've been very much, and he knows this, for the past few months, trying to get a one-on-one with Dan. So Dan, welcome. And if you don't mind, I want to ask you to share a little bit of your story of Life-Given Wounds, what inspired this ministry that you started, and the unique mission and the gap that it addresses.
Yeah, and just Orlando, great to be here. And I'm actually very excited. It's the first podcast I've ever done in development. I feel very humbled because I'm still learning a lot. But I love the topic because it's part of our ministry and mission as well. I hope to get into that spirituality of development a little bit later because I've had a big conversion on that point in how I approached it. But yeah, our nonprofit's called Life-Giving Wounds. We are a Catholic nonprofit dedicated to giving voice to the pain of adult children of divorce, separation, and to bring them healing in Christ by setting up local chapters all across the country and in Canada, to do retreats, do support groups, connections to counseling, connections to spiritual directors, mentors, friendships, and we're always innovating. We're going to be trying some new programs coming up and expand. We're trying to expand to pilot some college chapters even. So exciting things on our horizon for our ministry. Anybody listening, ask you check it out. If you're from a broken home, the Lord always wants to give you more in that healing realm. That's a wound that stays with you throughout your life. You bring in your relationships. You're always dealing with your parents till the day they die and even afterwards, right? Mourning their loss. So, this is a wound or wounds from childhood that keeps coming up. So why not bring it in front of the Lord, bring it in front of your spouse, bring it in front of yourself and see, what you can do to better your life from it. Because to live in the present, you have to occasionally look at the past and you got to look at the future too. So that's my little shtick. Check us out.
Of course, this is amazing. And one of the things that I've always appreciated about your work, and I remember about a year and a half ago, you and I just having some coffee, talking about your work, how different it is from what's out there, right? Your approach is different. So there's all these effort that comes with avoiding or getting ready for marriage and avoiding sort of getting to the point of divorce, right? There's a lot of effort in just giving the couples resources and training and just formation to carry a good marriage. But very few times I feel like I see ministries or missions like yours who are approaching the pain, the suffering and struggle that takes place post divorce, particularly for the children. Again, because we have this focus on the parents, on the marriage, on the people that go through the divorce. but what about the children, right? And I think that it's a unique place that not many people meet. So what was it that led you to say, I think the Lord is calling me to start this?
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't just one single moment
Sure.
where I felt the calling. It was like 10 or 15 different things. And sometimes the Lord, I joke with my wife, he has to use a divine 2x4 and hit me over the head, make it so clear you got to do this because I can be pretty thick skulled sometimes. And you're like, oh, yeah, maybe I should do it after the 20th time. Yeah, I mean, it's my story, it's my need. I realized very quickly how our society deals with this problem and helping the kids is you just try to help them when they're kids, if at all, but
Hmm.
there's not a lot of resources even for them because there's a lot of gaslighting that this isn't really a problem. This doesn't affect the kids that much. They're resilient, blah, blah. But the big thing is all the sociological studies in my own life too, these wounds really come up in adulthood, especially when you start seriously dating and trying to maintain a relationship
Yes.
with the hopes of marriage. And so it was my story and how it was affecting my dating, my relationships. But then I saw, oh my gosh, there's all this data that says this is one of the leading causes for divorce. That if you have unaddressed wounds from your childhood and you come from a broken home, you're 40% to some studies go as high as 200% more likely to divorce yourself. So it's like, okay, well, if we're going to really tackle the marriage question and strengthen marriage and prevent
Yes.
divorce, which a lot of people agree is a great goal, well, then one of the biggest bangs for your bucks is to help heal these family of origin wounds in the children of divorce or separation themselves. And by the way, when I use the word separation, I'm referring to anybody from a broken home. Your parents were never married.
Mm.
Yeah, you got annulment, your parents separated, one night stand, parent abandoned. Anybody who's lost the love of their parents together, definitively, whatever that may have been, whether it's cohabitation, dissolution, to divorce. Divorce is just the most prevalent. So, we mentioned that. I mean, I got into it because I wanted to strengthen marriage and prevent divorce and help people thrive in marriage. But it was a need of mine. I was in need of others. I saw that there was no specific ministry like this for adults in the Catholic space, but even in the secular space back in 2015. So, where there's no love, put love. Where there's
Mhm.
a need, try to meet it, try to rise and meet it rather than complain about it and, you know, do nothing. So, my own life, I saw the pastoral need in society. And also I was at a great institution, the John Paul II Institute for Marriage and Family. And they happened to be doing research on this
Mm.
question at the same time. My spiritual director was the one that pointed out, hey, you should really think about making this national. This is really great. For 5 years, we just did it locally, a local ministry in Washington, D.C., Arlington area. Yeah, it was my spiritual director. And then I kind of challenged him. I'm like, yeah, I don't know about that. I haven't made any money. And this is where the money thing comes. The money thing actually is a huge area of grace and trust and
Mm.
growth in my life, to be honest.
Yeah.
And that's where it's been interesting and fun how it relates to development. But I initially said no to my spiritual director on account of money. The first 5 years, not only did not make money, but we put in our own money as part of our tithe to pay for scholarships so these young adults could go to these retreats. So we like, if you're looking at it, we lost 5,000, 6,000 doing this ministry. It came from our tithe.
Yeah.
So I'm like, there's no way I can raise my family. My spiritual director, great spiritual director, Father Dan Leary. And I said, no. But he was wise. He was like, go back and talk to your wife. And my wife, like right away, was like, yes, yes, this is your calling, our calling. This is the world's need. We'll figure out the money thing later. But, and this is where it's so fascinating how you have to address your wounds. I mean,
Yes.
I had a lot of insecurity around money because money was like, supposedly, this was not the reason for the divorce, but the leading cause for arguments in my household. So it was something that my parents fought a lot about and contributed to their marital problems. So, that provoked a certain insecurity in me. And then that was doubled in the aftermath of my parents' divorce.
Mm.
As many adult children divorce experience, there's a lowering of the level of means, right? And, gone between the two houses, my dad always, financially was okay, but my mom was just above the poverty line. So that provoked, more anxiety financially and insecurity. And I've never wanted like millions of dollars, but
Yes.
just like enough money to provide for the family. And so when I was approaching this question for Life Giving Wounds, my big thing was like, hey, how am I going to provide for my family doing this? It's not to get $1 million,
Right.
not to get a high paying salary, just simply to provide for my family like month to month. And, it might be nice to have some savings on the side eventually. So it's interesting because this plays into development,
Yes.
right? I had all this insecurity with the finances, but it plays into the mission. It almost impeded my mission and my calling to found Life Giving Wounds. But luckily, my wife, my spiritual director, like I said, I got a divine 2x4, and there's a
Yeah.
lot more to that story, and we can get into that when we get into the development piece. But I did eventually say yes and take the huge financial risk. But I did do it methodically for our listeners out there. I didn't just simply, it's interesting doing this work. A lot of people have called me now, even though we're only 5 years old. How do you start a nonprofit? It's surprising me the number of people who just want to quit their job and start. I'm like, no, don't do that. It's like you have to have a plan. So even though it required a risk and trust on my part spiritually to get over some of my wounds, we did come up with a plan. And I'm
Praise the
happy to
Lord.
talk about that and what I've learned, because there's been a lot of failures and a lot of successes.
So that actually is a good segue into the next part of the conversation, talking about the challenges of building, but more particularly sustaining the mission, which leads into the development aspect of things. But let me ask you this question I think is going to set us up well. Of all the things that we all encounter when building a nonprofit or mission or ministry, right? Lack of resources. How the heck am I going to find staffing? How am I going to get people to know what it is that we do? And if they find out about it, how do I get them interested in and make them realize that this mission is worth both supporting and benefited from, right? And being served by? Of all the different things, what's actually in a good way surprised you the most about building life-giving wounds in a good way? Obviously, we all know the challenges, but what surprised
Mhm.
you as a leader to go like, this is amazing?
Oh, and we're not talking pastorally, but like actually founding a nonprofit
And
and
within you
all
as
the business side of
like,
things.
I realized
Yeah.
that I ended up being really good at this aspect that I didn't see myself.
Yeah. That is a great question. I mean, so the biggest surprise is always to see how the Lord works and
Yes.
heals our individual participants and just meeting them. But I think as a leader, who are some of the biggest surprises? I mean, one, I'll just be blunt. I am a little amazed by the success of our industry. Like, despite myself, I'm very aware of my flaws, and the Lord has been good. The Lord has been good to us. But I don't know. I just, it's funny because I encouraged my team just this week to praise God for his constancy, but always to be surprised by his creativity.
Yes.
And it's interesting, right? God is constantly creative. And so there's a lot of surprises that run through my head. It's hard to nail one down. But here, I'll say one for our topic. And I am really surprised at the level of how fundraising and development is ministry and mission.
Yes. You're still in my words.
And
Did
let
you
me
look at my
just, can I,
notes?
can I, no, but can I just share a glory story?
Yes.
That was incredible. It blew me away, and this is definitely one of the greatest surprises I've had. Yeah, like recently there was a donor. Now we'll give any,
Sure.
we keep everything confidential. And this donor gave us our largest donation we've ever received, 51,000, and it was an alumna. And the person said, "Thank you for allowing me to give this gift. I believe it's participating in my healing. And here's the story why." And this person does not have a lot of means, right? They actually got it as inheritance. And they said part of the suffering as a child divorce growing up was the custody payments and feeling that we never had enough money growing up. And there was perhaps a better ability by one of the parents to provide and give more money for the custody. And this was a source of suffering in this person to not have enough money when a parent could potentially give more. And then upon the death of this parent, they received a significant gift, which was painful because it showed that they had more
Yes.
means, but didn't give it to them. But on the other hand, it was healing for them because that parent did provide for them in the end. But then to give it to an organization like us, it helped her heal that person, that donor, because that gave an opportunity for this person to give back to others like her to provide for them, specifically children of divorce who were suffering.
Yes.
I've been praying with that for weeks, just so humbled, just so incredibly blessed to be able to participate in the Lord's movement of healing in this person's life.
Yes.
And it just really shows too the important need that donors have to give to organizations that are making big impacts to help people like them or where they were years ago. And again, I just was so deeply moved. I'm still just so deeply moved. It makes me want to be more generous. It makes me want to have a greater impact, to use every single one of those dollars to heal
Yes.
souls who don't have the means, financial or otherwise. We're very generous with our scholarships to our online ministry. So nobody, by the way, anybody who asks for a scholarship, we 100% give it to them
Yes.
if they need it. So there's great access because of gifts like this, but it just blew me away. This is just an example of not only healing them, but like in a way healing me. And then also through this gift, increasing our ministry's efforts to honor that gift. We are going to help as much as possible the souls that you want to impact and be radically generous with our scholarships to provide for those who go without. That was a huge surprise
Yes.
because I think originally when I approached fundraising, I was asking them something on behalf of others, but like for our ministry, for others, but not thinking about them. No, I say that meaning like how the gift can help them.
Correct.
I don't mean, my approach to fundraising always has been you help the person first and money's always second. So like when I go in these donor meetings or I go into making asks, I always am like, okay, you help them first, you love them first, regardless of if any money comes. And then only secondly, do you ask for money?
Yes.
And I even go into donor meetings with that mindset. Help the person, and if money comes, great. If not, no worries.
Amen.
But that has surprised me, is just how much giving a gift to an organization making this impact can be healing for them. That's awesome.
Yes.
That's the type of fundraising experience I want to deliver every single time.
And it's twofold. Context. One of the reasons where we always start with what is the mission for our audience and what led you to start it is because in a very real way, the act of raising funds, the act of building these relationships with our donors, the act of stewarding that next gift in itself is the mission. The mission is all encompassing. The mission is not just for those you serve, but also for those who allow you to serve them, for those who are providing the resources for you to serve those in need, and for those who are on staff with you, right? The need is all encompassing. And secondly, again, to the point that you just made, we are usually surprised to know the fact that people want to give. Not only do people want and have a desire to give, more specifically, and I want to use you, Dan, because you're on the episode today. More specifically, Dan, people want to give to you. And in a sense, in a very real sense, it doesn't matter what it is that you do. Obviously, Life Giving Wounds is powerful. But even beyond that, They want to give to you because of who you are as a person, what you've done for them in their lives, what oozes out of you and the Spirit of God within you. That's what they want to give to. And all the more when that person, that spirit, that work leads to the great mission of life-giving wounds. Do you know what I'm saying? And that's been something that has become clearer for me, both in donor meetings, but in the work that we do with all these different ministries. The truth, in my opinion, and this actually gets to the core of the conversation, is that there are a lot of parallels between your mission and donor engagement and development. So what I mean by that is you can draw a parallel or an analogy between healing wounds of people who are hurt, right? And inviting donors to support that very ministry. Why? Because both of them require honesty in the work that you're doing. Both of them require a great level of vulnerability, right? But in itself, it requires a lot of trust, right? So in that, what has been some of the things that have worked in building those relationships that have allowed for you to see that unexpected return? So if you want to talk about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, I think it starts with my mindset for fundraising, and I would say this has got to be true too, is like you always help the person in front of you first, and money is second. So, what has helped is I think, and I hope, and I pray that my donors see that, first of all, I'm here for them. And I really mean that.
Yes.
I'm here for them because everybody this side of heaven, nobody comes out unscathed. We all have wounds. And so I minister to them just like a participant on our retreat, first and foremost. And I think, at least those donors who have gotten to know, and you can't get to know everybody, and I think that's the sadness, is that, there's a lot of donors I wish I knew better, as they see that you care for them, and you care about the reasons that they give, you care about their wounds, their families, so we try to make it really personal. Like I do holy hours for donors. I do rosaries for donors. I try to love donors in particular ways. So trying to make it like really personal. It is not just true of the major donor, but also that monthly donor every month who's giving $10, but like that $10 is like the widow's mite in the gospel. I mean, it's like equivalent of like a $30,000 gift from somebody with major means, and those mean a lot. And I try to convey how much that gift matters to us. So I think that helps with trust and vulnerability. And it's meeting with them and building relationships. And that's hard, right? Because that's hard to scale. But as much as possible, we try to make a personal thing. We try to have a donor newsletter that gives them like behind the scenes looks, what's going on, what's going ahead, some of our fears, our struggles, our successes. So I think that helps with honesty and vulnerability. And you probably hear this ad nauseum, but like donor relationships are what it's all about.
Yes.
And yeah, I don't know what else to add to that.
But that's a really great point, because us as human beings, period, I think, unless that's one of our gifts, right? Or one of our love languages, as people like to say, expressing that we care about you, that we think about you, that you're important to us, it's very difficult. This is why, the easiest thing to do is also the hardest when it comes into stewarding gifts and stewarding relationships, right? Because so I had a guest early on in the episode who said, donor cultivation starts the moment that last gift came in. Right? Like stewarding the next gift comes the moment that comes in. And that is, or shows itself in the way of gratitude, right? So you just said something that's like so key that many of us in this work do not take advantage of. If you listen to the show and you happen to be a ministry, this is for you. When we are doing the work that we are open about, that's building God's kingdom, that's building the church, we've been open about it from the get-go to both the people that we serve and our donors. At the center of everything that we do and everything that we communicate, both in the people that we serve, but most especially with our donors. So to your point, not only is it doing rosaries, praying the rosary, or doing the holy hours for our donors, but letting them know that you're doing that and letting them know specifically about the intentions that they're going through. So when you ask and you tell a donor, for example, that's like the greatest tool that we have at our disposal. Dan, thank you so much for your last gift last week of $250. What a great blessing that is. Dan, I just want to be honest with you. You don't have to give to us. I'm about to do a holy hour. I'm about to say a rosary specifically for our donors. Dan, I want to say a decade for you. Is there anything specifically that you would like me to pray for? I would be honored to do that. Not just to thank you, but because your generosity and your support just do so much for what we do. Like that goes a long way. That tells a donor, not only does Dan know me, right? But he cares for me. And so many people, not only because of the work that you do, Dan, but because in general, that's life and society. We're hurting. We're just struggling with everyday life. And for somebody to go, can I just pray for you? Or I just want you to know that I care. My gosh, that is just so reassuring and such a gift. And that's how we keep the mission central to the donors and how we keep the donor central to the mission. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And you said something earlier that I think that care for the donor too is gratitude. As like that's part of the gratitude. I heard it once. Brian Welburn, who's a great development professional, said gratitude is the summation of the gift.
Yes.
I love that. And it's not just thanking them, but this gratitude that cares. And I think that's really important. It also keeps me up at night because I'm like, have I been grateful enough? You know, which one of my donors needs prayers?
Yes.
Which one, Lord, have I not checked in for a while? Because, you know, I'm human and limited in my finitude. The other thing, though, I want to add to this conversation for those listeners out there too, like, I don't want to just simply say development's all about this care and self-sacrifice and love.
I was going there.
It's overlooked. But, you know, donors do want to see impact. And that's the other thing that, you know, to be good stewards of their money, we want to show, like, the results do matter. That's part of the gratitude as well, right? And so, again, this story of this huge gift we got motivated me to work harder, to do better, to make a greater impact. And that's the other piece of this is the care, but also really being transparent about the impact that they're making. Not just stories, but numbers and data and how you use the money. Like all that matters. Having a plan matters. So I want to balance out this conversation too, because that's part of the care you show to the donor in respect for their gift is to continue to make an impact, to have a plan for that, to show results, the data, all that also matters. And transparency, you mentioned trust, transparency with the finances. I am very transparent. I'm like, hey, this is exactly what we're using this for. This is our financial situation. This is what it is. Maybe sometimes to my detriment, right? Yeah. Yes, I am. There's a lot of free sacrifice and time, you know, we're putting into that. But yeah, so I want to balance out this conversation and say like the data, the impact, having a plan also really matters.
But again, that is part of it. That is part of the care. When I build on that, I'm going to even take it a step further, right? So I have mentioned this in the show before, but we, as people who are in development, we are in the business of honoring our donors. And there's nothing, in my opinion, in this work, there's no greater way to honoring our donors and honoring their time that knowing a clear and specific invitation for them to discern upon and what that invitation, should it be accepted, can do for us. And what I mean by that is when I approach every meeting or when we approach every meeting, we should have a clear ask in mind already for that one individual. It could be, to your point, it could be very well the same as other people, but why is it that it matters to them and guide it towards a conversation, right? When we know what we're doing, in a sense, when we know what we're called to, we should be free, buddy. Why? Because when a donor shows up to a meeting, they're 95% there. That last 5% is on us to actually make the invitation. They are coming, knowing, and prepared mentally for an ask. They're waiting to see, okay, Dan, in a sense, when are you going to get to it? Right? I'm not saying that that happens every time because you build enough relationships. But when they get, especially to the meeting that it's been a while, or like we already had a thank you meeting. Now this is like my follow-up meeting. They're there. Okay, well, how much are you going to ask me for? And they want to be asked because, going back to the point of the example you made of the donor that you had that made that large gift, they themselves experience healing and a relief of just gratitude that comes out of them by actually making the gift. And if our mission offers a way for people to be blessed by giving to it, and for the Lord to move and act through us and our mission to bless the donor, then who are we to get in the way of that? Who are we to not allow the door to bless that person by making the invitation? Right? So when we
Yeah.
talk
Amen.
about care, spirituality, faith, and fundraising conversations, it's not only about the great work and how the Spirit is moving through the people that we are serving, but also how the Spirit can move and does move through our donors and our supporters, right? So
Oh yeah, 100%.
on that, and I know that
100%.
you've experienced this, I want to share a couple of takeaways with our audience and our listeners for them to add some value. Based on given that we got to that part of the conversation. What's one good lesson? I'm going to ask you two questions. The first one being, what's one good or great lesson that you have learned in this work, particularly in the raising of the funds and the development of relationships, that others can apply to their mission?
Yeah, like a practical. There's so many things. I mean, first of all, the practical is to actually have a plan. I think a lot of times people just come out and they're like, oh, I know these people, I'm just going to go and talk to them.
Yes.
You have to have a methodical, detailed plan. You need a fundraising calendar, a fundraising database. You have to have a system that reminds you to have a check-in every quarter or somebody from my team for all my major donors. Also, to realize, for me, a big thing is sustainability with donations. Like, I like to have, just like we have diversified investment funds with mutual funds, like our ministry should have, I did this exercise called the dynamic dozen. It's called seven-figure fundraising.
Yep.
Having a dynamic dozen of major donors, but also something that book doesn't address, have a monthly donor program. I think that diversifies, but I did some numbers before the show just for your audience, and 83%, so 58% of our fundraising haul every year comes from our dynamic dozen major donors. And then another 25% comes from our monthly donors. So 83% come from our 12 top major donors and our monthly donors, 83% of fundraising. But that's very diversified. And I think that's important. Like, it's okay to get those big gifts, $1 million gifts, $100,000 gifts from like one major donor. Use that as seed money, but we want to build sustainability where you have 12 to 24 major donors, no one ideally annually providing more than 20, 25% of the budget. And to have a monthly donor program, I think, is also important for sustainability. So that's been a big thing for me for sustainability, is not put all our eggs in just that one unicorn donor. It's great if you get them. It's great to cultivate them. They can do special projects to grow your ministry. Like, heck, I have a whole plan developed if somebody gives us $1 million.
Yes.
We haven't had $1 million gift yet. But sustainability, you want to have 12 to 24 major donors who are your bedrock. So if one of them has a downturn, and you want to have a monthly giving program. So to me, one of the practical takeaways is to come up with a program, an annual calendar that goes and works towards that. But also, my annual calendar has check-ins. Like, again, if it's about relationships, you've got to schedule those relationships. And again, that's probably my challenge. If I can get your advice at some point, Orlando, during this call, is at what point do the relationships become too many that you need to hire outside help? And discerning that, or hire a development director eventually.
So excellent question.
Yeah.
One is, I'm a big proponent of planning because clarity creates unity, right? When you're clear, when you know where you're going, where the staff is going, where the board is going, where the mission is going, our donors are clear. And when our donors are clear, that creates unity. And that unity allows for that gift not only to be renewed, but likely to increase. Secondly, to what you just said, I think I want to provide an encouragement to both you and the audience. If you find yourself at that level, 83% of your budget comes from major donors and monthly donors. What you just said in plain words is 83% comes from donors who are likely lifetime donors to your mission. Because there are two ways to get a lifetime donor. One is for them to become a monthly donor, and the other one to become a major gift donor. Because through their consistent giving as a monthly donor, they're showing that they're committed to you and you're part of their monthly budget. Through the big donors or the major gifts, they're saying, this gift matters, and the size of the gifts tells you that I'm committed to you, right? So it's going to take a lot on our end to mess that up. So 83%, it's already people who are committed to you, right? But to your point of at what point does it become too much? There are ways to mitigate that if you don't have the resources to pay a full-time person or to start developing that. And we've talked about this a lot. The development work is not solely yours or the person that does development, in a sense. The work of fundraising and development is everyone's in the entire company. I'm not saying that everyone needs to be making asks in the organization. I'm not saying everyone is the one saying thank yous. But we need to keep in mind that our job, so I read this book years ago on sales, right? And profitability. This part was good. It said, it's everyone's role in the company to make the company profitable. From the CEO all the way down to the person that picks up the garbage cans, that it's employed by us, right? That's their job, to make the company profitable. So when you look about that, the work of ministry, the work of nonprofit and fundraising is everyone's job to have an eye for development. I want to make sure that our organization is sustainable. Maybe I'm the director of programs. Maybe I'm just a volunteer, but my job is ingraining me that I want to make the organization sustainable. What does that mean? I want to be on the look. I want to offer myself like who on the board can help me maintain these relationships? Who on our staff can help me steward some of the relationships? Who on the board, on my staff, and my volunteers can help me make these asks or write these appeals? Stuff that takes a little bit off your plate, but allows both participation of the rest of the team, right? But also frees you to do what matters most, which is both the overseeing of the mission and the guy. Go ahead, you had something.
No, this is great because this is the complementary point. So just like you should have a diversified donor base, I think you should have a diversified donor team.
Yes.
Because everybody has a unique gift to offer in this area. Let me just share a really cool story. So for instance, we had our first intern this summer. She had these two really brilliant ideas for fundraising because we have an all hands meeting.
Yes.
And she was not responsible at all for fundraising. So to your point, I have to grow on this. But we talk about it at our all hands meeting. That's one of the core topics that we talk about. And out of nowhere, she had these two phenomenal ideas that have paid off really well. And I'm still acting on one of them, and we'll see where it goes. But it just goes to show, like, oh man, she offered a fresh, new perspective. This young woman right out of college that turned out to be great. And that just goes to show too, like, yeah, we need to have diversified donor staffs. And the best way to do that is, like you said, just to make sure it's everybody's, because it's, and from my perspective, because it's God's work too, because you're asking for a good cause on behalf of God to heal souls and evangelize.
Yes, and two things on that. When we know that this is God's work, is the invitation really about money? Or is the invitation, is that ask for them to have a deeper commitment, a deeper relationship with the Lord through their philanthropic giving? That's the invitation. And when we have that freedom,
Amen.
Right? That freedom, we can just go, whether they say yes or no, at that moment, it's out of our hands. There's no pressure, right? Because that's between them and God. And God knows what he's going to do. We want our donors to give of themselves where the Lord wants them to give. And guess what? They want the same thing. So we're on the same page already with our donors, right? Secondly,
that's right.
Put yourself on the donor's shoes. When not only they hear from Dan, they hear from Bethany, but they hear from Kathy and from John and Tim, right? They just go, holy gosh, like there's a whole team of people involved in this mission. This is a real thing. Not only is it a real thing, this is like changing lives. And I can tell because it comes across in every conversation that I have with different people, with different staff members, with different board members. So hopefully that's an encouragement for not only you, Dan, but for everyone listening. If you don't have a team, or at least subsections, or to what Dan's point, if you haven't diversified your development efforts within the existing parameters of the organization, I would encourage you to think on that and see if you can do it. I know that we're running out of time, but I just want to say thank you. Go ahead. You have something.
Yeah, so my practical takeaway is building off of what Orlando has said, and kind of for this podcast, again, to build the relationship first, care for them, heal for them. And as part of that, to make the impact, their relationship with the Lord central. And that may involve giving to you, may not involve giving to you. Point 2, to diversify your donor base for sustainability. But then 3, diversify your team. Everybody has a unique gift, from the intern up to the CEO. Just, as we seek to conclude here, I wanted to share as well about how I put it, but that fundraising, it's the spirituality.
Yes.
The spirituality piece that fundraising, properly understood, is
a ministry.
Yeah, I mean, it is a ministry. Yeah. That's not exactly the way I wanted to put it, but we'll go there. I had a deeper, more profound point that I'll probably think of post podcast interview.
That's okay. Text me.
Yeah,
we'll add it to the notes at the end, Dad. But I do wanted to thank you. Why? And the main reason is, obviously, I enjoy getting together with you every time, and I enjoy the mission of what you do. I've connected you with some clients, and I thought about it when you were talking about something. Like, there might be another client that you guys can probably work together and do some great work. But as you shared personally and truthfully, I do want to thank you, because both healing deep wounds, particularly in what you do, and growing missions from the get-go, from scratch, in a sense, both require courage, but both also are life-giving, right? That invitation in itself to ask people to support the mission, to ask people to join the retreats, right? To allow the Lord to move in their lives, generates that trust. And when that trust is built throughout the organization, throughout the movement, throughout the mission, that's what's going to lead people to support it. And at the end of it all, that's the heart of donor-centric fundraising and development, which is what we're all about. So I want to leave you with, encourage you that you're doing great work. And the fact that you got someone, to the testimony you gave earlier, to give you that much money out of an inheritance, it's a testimony of what the Lord is doing through your mission and through the missions of so many. I'm sure you're not the only one that this is happening to. So I just wanted to thank you for coming on board, Dan. And just lastly, if somebody wanted to find Life-Giving Wounds, to go to our retreat, how does one even get it in their parish or their diocese or their campus? They're a college student.
Yeah, just go to lifegivingwounds.org, and you can click collaborate with us if you want information, bring it to your parish, your diocese, or college. You can also just email me, Dan, at lifegivingwounds.org. And yeah, join us if you're also a listener and you're in need of some extra healing from family of origin wounds. We have online ministry, 30 chapters across the United States, 1 in Canada. So yeah, lifegivingwounds.org.
Lifegivingwounds.org. And if you're listening to this and you are inspired by Dan's story, and the Lord is tugging at your heart and you want to give, on their main page, top right corner says donate. Go ahead and click that button for our friend Dan. You never know how the Lord can bless you by making that gift to this beautiful ministry. Dan, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you to everyone who's joined us again and listening to this episode. This has been the Donor Centric Approach. Please remember always to keep your donors at the center of everything that you do, and you will see results. Thank you so much, Dan, again. Thank you, everyone, for listening. You're the best. God bless.
God bless.